Second part. Down the road 3 miles from the spot where the Marcus brothers encountered the strange woman, a particularly high and rocky mountain loomed off the left side of the road. To the eye of the uninformed traveler, the heap of countless rocks, large and small, was merely a product of nature. But, upon closer inspection, the pieces of stone that at a glance had seemed to be stacked haphazardly were, in fact, arranged systematically by someone or something with an understanding of dynamics. And, as the arrangement of the rocks became clear, so too did the eerie aura surrounding them. A chill was carried down like a ghost from the icy heights of the mountain, rising up the backs of the most courageous and the most fearful travelers alike. And though the mountain looked like it might be easily scaled, no matter how tough the human that challenged it was, part way up its scaly surface the rocks were laid out in such an intricate way that they'd cave in a second. Even if by some slim chance a climber got through that part, there were places on the route where every rock was rigged to bury the climber in an avalanche of stone. Still, if fortune smiled on them and, by some miracle, the climber made it into the bowels of the mountain, their eyes would be greeted by a single cavern. While passing through it, they'd be blasted by damp winds that seemed to blow from the very nether hells, and then they'd soon come to a fortress constructed from cyclopean stones and colossal trees. Despite the fact that the very human sounds of laughter, shouting, and crying could be heard constantly, and the smoke from cook fires never ceased, there was something in the atmosphere that separated this place from the world of humanity, and an eldritch aura which hung in the air. This was the nest of demons that made the Marcus clan shudder, the village of the Barbaroi. It was a mystery just how on earth the carriage and the 6-horse team drawing it had got into the village. But enter they did, as the light of dawn was finally beginning to swell with the vitality of day. There were houses in the village, and plenty of men and women, stopping where they worked or poking their heads out of doorways. They formed a ring around the carriage the instant it came to a halt. Perhaps they were already cognizant of the true nature of their strange visitor, for not one of them tried to open the door. Pushing his way through the ring, which was now several bodies deep, an old man with a hoary mane came into view. His white beard was long enough to sweep the ground, and his back was so stooped that his chest was parallel to the earth. Untold centuries old, his face was obscured by countless wrinkles, and yet every inch of him brimmed with an ineffable vigor. He approached the door on the left-hand side of the carriage and rapped lightly on the steel surface with his cane. Following that, he nodded to himself, and, after turning around to give a wink to the masses behind him, he put his withered, clay-like ear to the door. The wind died out immediately. The deathly silence persisted for what seemed like hours, but in due time the old man started to nod with the kindly countenance of a codger doting on his grandchildren. I see. I'm glad you came. It's God you desire, then, to protect your lady love. Very well, very well. So, how many do you need? 3. Did you have anyone particular in mind? The eyelids he had shut like a thin line flew open. A fearsome light spilled from them, but, after a moment, he closed his eyes once more. Bengay Caroline Mashira. Oh, those are the very best, the cream of our village. Fine. When your flare informed us that you were being followed, Caroline headed out to toy with those wandering mongrels, but they'll be back presently. They are entirely at your disposal. Could one of the nobility, who should be comatose by day, be holding a conversation with this old man, Not one of those assembled seemed to find this the least bit suspect, as the old man's eyes suddenly opened again. "Oh, so you say you have one more favor to ask," the old man muttered. "What's that?" "There's another who follows you solo, you say?" "Hmm, a dampier." The air stirred violently. None of the villagers moved an inch, as if a ghastly white aura had enveloped them. Moans of shock came from the villagers' lips as the following words slipped from the old man. "His name is D." In a while, when silence once again ruled the scene, the mutterings of the old man were adorned with a tremble of unbridled delight. "Ah, the greatest vampire hunter on the frontier. I believe we're up to the challenge. If we lure him into our stronghold and attack, slowly wearing him down, that is. That service, however, shall cost you quite dearly." Page break indicated by a small cross. An hour after his brothers had gone, Grovek's condition took a strange turn. His breathing became rapid and shallow, and sweat gushed from his lean face. His state was more serious than usual, which panicked Layla. His pulse was racing too. "A seizure," she mumbled to herself, "but not like any we've ever seen before. What in the name of hell is this?" She put as much ibuprofen as she could into the bottle on his IV. And she was headed to the kitchen to cool down the cloth from mopping the sweat from his brow when the bus rocked violently. Metal-eating utensils fell one after another to the floor, and though the sound-dampening carpet tried to preserve the silence, the vehicle was filled by a cacophony. Every wound in the girl's body pulsed sheer agony. Hastily securing the IV bottle with electrical tape, Layla raced around the vehicle looking out all the windows, checking in every direction. There was no one out there. They were parked in the middle of a circular clearing about 100 yards in diameter that wasn't far off the road. With a click of her tongue, Layla dove into the garage to the vehicle's rear. Ignoring the 5 cyborg horses stored there with their limbs retracted, she leapt into the driver's seat of her battle car. As Layla turned the key in the ignition, a comforting vibration swept through her. Without looking at the digital gauges beside the steering yoke, Layla grasped the condition of the car like it was something she could hold in her 2 hands. Atomic fuel at 98% of capacity. Engine check. Stabilizers check. Puncture damage negligible. Propulsion voltage good to go up to 97%. Weapon controls okay. Here we go. The rear doors of the bus opened, and, without waiting for the ramp to slide into place, the battle car flew out. She gave it full throttle just as it touched down and took it for a loop around the bus. The bus was the only thing shaking, and there really was no one out there after all. Layla parked the battle car broadside to seal off the entrance to the clearing, and then stood up in her seat like a vengeful god. "Who's there? Come on out. I'm Layla Marcus of the Marcus clan. You won't catch me running and hiding," she declared, trying to keep the pain that knifed through her body from showing on her face. Then, as suddenly as it began, the shaking of the bus stopped. A cheerful voice came in response. "My missy, aren't you the high-spirited one?" Layla spun around in amazement. The perplexed expression she donned just before turning her head was because she didn't know where the distinct voice was issuing from. There was no one behind her, nor to her left nor to her right. "Where are you?" she asked. "Where the hell are you? Come on out, you lousy coward." "There's nowhere to come out from," the voice jeered. "I'm right beside you. If you can't see me, the fault is with your eyes." Her blood nearly curdled. Once again, she scanned her surroundings. She realized the voice spoke the truth. Whoever it was, they had to be somewhere. Right under her very nose, no less. Layla harnessed every fiber of her being to search in all directions. Like her brothers, she'd honed her five senses to a razor-sharp level. Now her hearing and her sense of touch told her there wasn't any other living creature in the clearing. Yet, despite that, she could hear the voice. Layla was seized by a fear unlike any she'd felt before. It sprang from a loss of self-confidence and wounds that hadn't fully healed. With the sliver gun from her side now in hand, Layla jumped out of the car. Her bloodshot eyes darted around her. She hadn't given up the fight yet. A stabbing pain shot up her back. Catching a hail of fire from the sliver gun she unleashed as soon as she whipped around, one of the chunks of rock hemming the clearing was reduced to dust. Fired by highly pressurized oxygen, the 500,000 1-micron long and .001 micron wide needles in the gun could leave the walls of a noble's castle as friable as unglazed pottery. But that didn't count for much against an unseen opponent. Layla reached one hand around to her back. The stickiness she felt was blood. Clearly she'd been cut by some sort of blade. But she was powerless to do anything about it. Agony assailed her for a second time, and Layla fell to her knees. Her strength was dwindling rapidly. The voice returned. "What's wrong, Missy? Compared to the wound my colleague suffered, this is nothing. Nothing at all. It'll take a lot more than that to drive you mad, won't it?" "Who the hell are you? Where are you?" "I already told you, didn't I? I'm right beside you. If you look hard enough, you should see me. You don't see me because you think you can't. Here, maybe this will help you understand." The Marcus girl gave an agonized cry. Fresh blood spilling from the back of her shredded shirt, Layla crouched down on the ground. What kind of cold-blooded torture was this? Slashing the flesh of a defenseless girl with deep cuts and shallow. Perhaps in some sick way her attacker was aroused by the sight of Layla and agony, because the voice had a ring akin to lust when it asked, "Well, how do you like that? Taste more pain, more suffering. Your brothers will be getting a taste of very same treatment from me before too long." The sneering laughter ended sharply. Layla could feel someone shaking intensely right beside her. An unearthly oil was gusting their way, coming from the entrance to the clearing. Must be Nolt, she thought. No, it's not. Another disappointment lodging in her breast, Layla twisted her face around in desperation. It was unclear how he'd got him by the battle car, but a black-garbed youth stood casually in the center of the clearing, not making a sound. Forgetting her pain at the beauty of the one who now gazed at her, Layla swooned in glorious intoxication. The unsettling presence vanished in an instant. Waiting for a while on horseback while he seemed to size up the situation, Dee quietly guided his horse to Layla's side. "Your opponent's not here anymore," he said. "Can you stand?" Torpidly, Layla pulled herself up. No problem at all, as you can see. What in blazes brings you here? Her bluster carried no animosity. Borgoff had told her that someone had taken care of her when she was hurt, and no one but this gorgeous young man could have fit that bill. I saw your flare and came. Where's the rest of your clan? In the bus. Try anything funny and they'll come flying out here, Layla lied. So they're just sitting back watching their little sister do battle, eh? The Marcus clan has hit a new low. At Dee's tone, which merely conveyed the truth without sarcasm, Layla became enraged. She staggered. The substantial blood loss she'd suffered had caught up with her. Her other wounds hadn't healed yet either. Glancing once more at the cold beauty of the youth staring down at her from horseback, Layla passed out. Page break indicated by a small cross. The next thing she knew, she was lying on a bed. And before she had time to notice her bare skin was wrapped in bandages, Layla flipped herself over and looked toward the door. A black figure was just leaving, without a sound. Wait. Please, just wait a sec. Layla herself didn't know why she called out to him so frantically. The shadowy figure stopped. Layla got up. She jerked the tube out of her right arm. The attached bottle of plasma rocked wildly. It was plain to see who'd gone to the trouble of setting up her transfusion. Go back to sleep, he told her. You're liable to open your wounds and wake your brother. Never mind him, she replied. Yet, despite what she said, she peeked in on Grovek across the aisle. Confirming that his condition was stable, Layla felt relieved. Suddenly, the piercing pain returned to her body, and she let out a groan. Don't go, she cried. If you go, I'll die. The young man headed for the door. Hold on. Don't you even care what happens to me? Layla didn't know why she sounded so miserable as she said this. Could it be that she simply wanted him by her side? No. That thought didn't occur to her. She was going to follow him, but her foot caught on something and she tumbled to the floor. The scream that escaped her was no fabrication. The youth walked over calmly and picked her up. My back. It's killing me. That was a lie. Carry me as far as the bed. The young hunter turned his back to her again. Wait. What was that thing? If you leave, it might come back. Please, stay with me. The youth turned around. I'm the competition, you know. You're my savior, mine and Grove's. And if my brothers come back, I won't let them lay a finger on you. There's something I should tell you first, the young man continued without concern. I cut down your brother Nolt. Layla's eyes shot up to him. A wild rage spread through her body. It looked like she might leap at Dee. But instead, she let her shoulders drop. I see, she muttered numbly. So my brother got killed. I think I understand why. I mean, he went up against you, right? Wait, don't go. I want you here by my side, even if it's just for a little while longer." Something besides her anguished cries must have stayed the stride of the icy youth. He returned to the bedroom. Layla lay down on the bed, and the young man put his back against the wall, looking down at her. "Why did you save me? Not once, but twice now," she asked. "I had some time on my hands." "You're not after the noble, then?" "I figured out where he's headed." "Oh? You wouldn't be kind enough to share that, would you? My brothers would be overjoyed." "Is that your sick brother in the bed over there?" the youth inquired softly. He made no attempt to look at Grovek. "Yep. Fact is, he hasn't even been able to walk or anything since the day he was born. But it seems he can do something else instead." A look of astonishment raced across Layla's face. Soon, her sober expression returned, and she said, "You're a strange one, aren't you? Saving the competition twice and all. Even though you had no qualms about killing one of my brothers. What? Are you afraid taking down a woman would bring shame on your sword? If you come at me, I'll cut you down." At these impassive words, Layla grew pale. She knew he was serious. Here was a young man with the keenness of a mystic blade concealed behind his beauty. And yet, while their eyes were locked, she wouldn't mind being slashed so long as it was Dee who did it. The thought that she'd even want him to kill her welled up in her breast like an enchanted fog, turning the contents of her heart and mind into slush. That must have been the power of a Dampier, the power of one descended from the nobility. "You're a strange guy," Layla said again. "You aren't even going to ask me where my brothers went. If I hadn't woken up, you'd have left, wouldn't you? Like a shadow, like the wind. Are all Dampiers like that? How long have you been a hunter?" Her own question unexpectedly brushed aside. Layla became a bit disoriented. "How long?" "For as long as I can remember. Besides, I can't live any other way. This isn't a job for women. When it gets to the point you enjoy stalking your prey, that's proof that you're not a woman anymore." "How tactful of you to say. Keep your opinions to yourself," Layla said, turning away. Any other man would have had the palm of her hand or a knife headed their way. But because the youth spoke in that unconcerned tone of his, neither reproachful nor teasing, there was something in his words that shook Layla. "I can't very well change my life at this stage of the game," she continued. "I've got too much blood on my hands. It comes off if you wash them." "Why would you say something like that? You trying to put me out of work?" The young man made his way to the door. "The next time you see me," he said, "you'd better forget the small talk and just start shooting. I won't hold back either." "That's just fine by me," she replied. And there was a grieving hue in Layla's eyes. "Your brothers wouldn't make much of a stink over losing one little sister," the shadowy figure said as it faded into the sunlight. "Any girl who cries out for her mother as she lays dying isn't cut out for hunting." And then the youth was gone, like a shadow melting in the sun. After he left, his words continued to ring in Layla's ears, and the girl's eyes bored into the closed door, and something in them blurred softly. And just as she was going for the door, a thin hand caught hold of her sleeve. Grove. Layla, you're not gonna listen to what that guy said, are you? The voice from under the blanket sounded furtive and twitching. You wouldn't listen to that guy and go off and leave me and the others, now would you, Layla? Don't you forget about you know what. Quit it. The scrawny hand Layla tried to shake off held her entirely too tenaciously. Don't you ever forget that, Layla, Grovek rasped. You belong to all of us. Second part, end.